the cartographer who listened to the earth's breath. It is said that some questions do not arrive with thunder, nor with urgency, but drift instead like a stray whisper through the dust of forgotten rooms. And tonight, in the soft hush before sleep, such a question finds you. What if the world once wore a different shape? The question lingers in the darkness like a faint echo, a ripple across the surface of an untroubled pool. You follow that ripple as it guides you through a narrow passage, its stone walls cool beneath your fingertips, its air carrying the scent of age-old cedar and ancient paper. At the end of the passage, a room opens quietly, a chamber lost to time, a forgotten archive where moonlight slips through a cracked roof and settles upon piles of scrolls, tablets, and crumbling volumes. Here, silence reigns gently. It hangs in the air like a veil, delicate and sacred, waiting for a careful hand to lift it. You step farther inside. Dust swirls upward in slow spirals, glittering faintly where the moonlight touches each grain. The wooden beams of the ceiling groan softly, as if exhaling after centuries of stillness. And then you see it. An ancient map resting on a stone table. At first, it seems curled into itself like a sleeping creature, its edges brittle, its parchment carrying the gentle wrinkles of time. But as a breeze drifts through the broken tiles of the map stirs. It unfurls slowly, as though waking from a long and delicate dream. Its surface trembles. Its ink swirls subtly, patterns shifting just enough that the coastline seems to breathe. You lean closer. The lines you see are not the ones you know. Not the continents familiar to your modern memory, not the borders taught in quiet classrooms. The map shows something else entirely. Shapes that do not match what you have seen before. Coastlines drawn like drifting shadows. Oceans bleeding into valleys. Mountain ranges rising in places where your mind recalls only plains. And there are islands. Small starlit marks scattered across the parchment with no names, only symbols. Spirals, crescents, dots aligned like constellations. An oceanic pattern forms between them, as though the cartographer saw not land and water, but the breath of the earth itself. You inhale softly, trying not to disturb the fragile parchment. Its texture glitters beneath the moonlight, revealing faint lines you hadn't noticed before. Whispers tell us that this place once belonged to a cartographer unlike any other. A quiet soul who believed the earth spoke in pulses, in subtle tremors, felt only at dawn, in sighs carried by the deep places beneath stone and soil. He was not a man of conquest, nor a servant of any king. He carried no banners, waged no claims. Instead, he traveled the world alone, seeking not boundaries but breath. Listening not for human voices, but for the heart of the land itself. Some said he slept with his ear pressed to the ground, as though waiting for secrets to rise from the depths. Others believed he wandered the shores by moonlight, listening to waves whisper stories the daylight drowned. Whatever the truth of him, his work remains. Or rather, one work remains. Here in this chamber where time has chosen to forget everything but dust and silence. You brush your hand lightly across the map's edge. Its ink responds, swirling like mist caught in a slow breeze. Lines sharpen, fade, and re-emerge elsewhere, as though the map itself refuses to stay fixed. Perhaps the world was never meant to be still. Perhaps the cartographer understood that land and sea move with a rhythm too slow for human lifetimes to see. A rhythm marked by the shifting of stars, by the deep breath of the planet beneath our feet. The map changes again. Now you see two continents touching where an ocean now rests. You see valleys where modern cities stand. You see cliffs rising where calm plains are known today. And there, near the bottom edge of the map, you see a chain of islands, drawn with delicate strokes, their shapes unmistakably like a constellation. Were they real? Or dreams the cartographer traced into existence? The map offers no answers, only shifting possibilities. You look around the chamber. Scrolls lie scattered. Some are blank, others filled with sketches of trees, mountains, and winding rivers that seem to change direction as the moonlight moves across them. You pick up one scroll gently. Its surface shows a mountain range. But as you tilt the parchment, the peaks soften, their ridges blurring into rolling hills. You realize the mapping is not literal. It is symbolic, fluid, alive. The cartographer was not drawing land as it was, but as it felt, as it pulsed beneath the quiet breath of the world. There is a small leather-bound journal beside the map. Its cover is faded, edges frayed, but when you open it, you are greeted with gentle handwriting. Soft strokes that seem to flow like water. Most of the pages contain sketches. Coastlines shaped by moonlight. Mountains rising into spiral patterns. Rivers drawn with lines that resemble veins beneath the skin of the earth. But on one page, you find words. Just a few. The world whispers its shape only to those who listen without wanting to change it. You sit with this line for a moment, feeling its weight settle in your chest. Was this the cartographer's guiding belief? That the earth, like a living being, carried its own breath, its own pulse, its own subtle shifting of form? If so, it is no wonder the map refused to stay still. For how could one capture the living shape of the earth with static lines? In forgotten corners of the earth, some still tell stories of a mapmaker who traveled not with rulers or compasses, but with silence. He was said to wake before dawn when the world holds its breath, and walk until the sun rose fully. At those moments, when night and day touched, the earth spoke most clearly. Not in words, not in sound, but in small tremors, in gentle pulses beneath the soil, in the shifting dance of dust across stone. He listened, he watched, he felt, and from these sensations, he drew a world others could not see. A world in motion, a world unfinished, a world dreaming. You return your gaze to the map. Its ink has settled now into a shape you do not recognize. A world both familiar and unfamiliar, as though memory and imagination have woven themselves together. Perhaps this is what the cartographer saw. Not a world defined by borders, but by breath. Not a world of names, but of rhythms. The chamber grows quieter. Moonlight dims. Shadows lengthen. The map trembles once more. Its edges curl inward. A soft, slow motion, like a creature returning to sleep. You watch as it folds itself into a shape small enough to hide, small enough to disappear. And suddenly, you understand why history remembers so little of this map. Perhaps it vanished not because it was stolen, or burned, or lost, but because it chose to vanish. Because some truths are not meant for every eye, every hand, every mind. Some truths prefer to rest in the quiet chambers of forgotten archives, waiting for someone gentle enough to hear them. The map becomes still. Its surface fades. The ink dissolves into faint, ghost-like impressions. Barely there. Barely real. Barely memory. You step back, letting the silence settle around you. The room hums softly, as if the earth beneath it is breathing, and you realize something else. Perhaps the world did once wear a different shape, or perhaps it wears many shapes still, shifting quietly beneath the veil of time. Perhaps the cartographer saw what others overlooked, not because he was gifted, but because he was listening. And as the last traces of moonlight spill across the parchment, a final thought lingers in the air. Did the world change? Or did we simply forget how to read it? The question hangs gently, like a lantern suspended over dark water, glowing just enough to guide you softly into sleep. The library of shifting horizons. It is said that some doors do not open with the weight of a hand, but with the weight of time itself. And tonight, you stand before such a door. A stone slab worn smooth by centuries of silence. The air around it is cool, still, expectant, as though the very dust is holding its breath. For a moment, nothing moves. Then, with the faintest sigh, the stone begins to shift. Grains of dust rise in a thin veil, glittering softly in the lantern glow that filters from within. The slab slides aside, groaning like a sleepy giant, and a chamber reveals itself. Hidden, patient, lit by starlight captured in ancient lanterns. You step inside. The lanterns flicker with a pale celestial glow, as though each one holds a drop of condensed night sky. Their light falls upon rows of shelves carved directly into the rock, each one holding scrolls and tablets that seem older than memory itself. The air is thick with the scent of old parchment, faded ink, and the faint fragrance of oils used by long-vanished hands. Beneath the silence, you sense something deeper. A pulse, a hum, a whisper of movement, hidden beneath the stillness of stone. This is the library of shifting horizons, a place where the world was recorded, not as something fixed, but as something alive. A world shaped not by borders, but by breath. A world guided not by rulers, but by stars. You take a step forward, and the dust beneath your feet rises again, curling into tiny spirals as though stirred by invisible currents. Some believe this library was created by monks who devoted their lives to the quiet study of the earth's hidden rhythms. These monks held a belief that geography was not a solid, immovable truth, but a fluid expression, a tide of land and water shifting beneath celestial influence. They listened to the deep places of the world, to the tremors that moved in the early hours of dawn, to the slow, ancient breath of mountains and the soft exhale of rivers. They believed that continents were not anchored continents at all, but drifting islands of time whose shapes changed when the heavens shifted above them. As you move deeper into the chamber, your fingertips brush the surface of a nearby tablet. The stone is cool, etched with a map of impossible beauty. It shows a coastline you do not recognize, curved like the shape of a sleeping serpent, wrinkled like the edge of a forgotten dream. But as the lantern light flickers, the coastline changes. Its edges soften, shift, reattach themselves to another shape entirely. The map transforms before your eyes, quietly, as though remembering something long forgotten. You inhale slowly, The air tastes of dust and mystery. The aisles stretch out before you like the ribs of a sleeping beast. Each shelf a cavern of knowledge, each scroll a doorway into a world that may or may not have ever existed. You lift a scroll gently from its resting place. Its surface is thin, fragile, as though woven from moonlight and sand. Unfurling it, you discover a map of oceans. But these oceans move. Ripples shimmer along their lines as though stirred by an unseen tide. Small islands appear beneath your gaze, then fade as you blink, replaced by different islands, different shapes, different possibilities. Some lands exist only when two stars align. Others appear only under a full moon. Still others shimmer faintly, as though belonging to a world that exists just beyond the reach of waking. The monks believe that the heavens guided the shape of the earth, that when constellations shifted in the sky, the world shifted in answer. Not suddenly, not violently, but slowly, like a dancer adjusting their stance to match the rhythm of a song. Your eyes drift to a set of stone tablets stacked neatly beside a cracked pillar. Each tablet bears etched lines that resemble rivers, but the rivers do not flow in a single direction. They branch-fold spiral, as though mapping the breadth of water itself. One tablet shows a river that flows in two directions, one current moving toward the sea, the other returning inland to feed a valley now swallowed by desert. Another tablet shows a mountain range that rises under moonlight, but softens into rolling hills at dawn. Perhaps the monks recorded the world not as it was, but as it felt. Not as something carved in stone, but as something born from sky, starlight, and silence. As you continue wandering, you notice something strange. The very walls of the library seem to breathe. A subtle movement, almost too soft to perceive, but unmistakable. The lanterns flicker, shadows shift, and the shelves themselves seem to lean inward, as though remembering the hands that once filled them. It is said that the library holds memory in its stones, that each tablet, each scroll, each fragment of writing stirs the chamber into quiet remembrance of the many shapes the earth once wore. Perhaps this is why the air feels so alive. Perhaps the walls are not merely walls, but echoes. Echoes of knowledge, echoes of forgotten skies, echoes of worlds that once dreamed differently. You pause beside a towering pillar engraved with spirals that resemble both waves and galaxies. Running your hand across it, you feel warmth, as though the stone remembers being touched by hands centuries old. Beside the pillar lies a scroll sealed with faded twine. You loosen the knot gently. The parchment unfurls with a soft sigh. This map is unlike the others. It does not depict land or sea or mountains or rivers. Instead, it shows a series of concentric circles, each one marked by tiny symbols. Stars, moons, strange geometric forms. At the center of the circles lies a single dot. Small, unassuming, yet placed with absolute intention. You cannot help but wonder if the dot represents the earth, or perhaps something else entirely. The heart of the world, the breath beneath the breath, the pulse beneath the pulse. The monks believed that energy flowed through the earth in slow, rhythmic patterns, much like tides. They claimed that when the stars shifted, these patterns shifted as well. That sometimes a land would rise, only to fall again centuries later. That sometimes a river would appear, as though remembering an ancient path, before vanishing once more into the quiet desert. Could they have mapped these unseen forces, these invisible tides? The more you look at the scroll, the more you sense that it is less a map and more a meditation on movement, on impermanence, on the soft truth that nothing, not even land, remains fixed forever. The lanterns flicker again. The shadows deepen. Somewhere near the back of the chamber, a scroll slips from a shelf and unrolls itself gently upon the floor. You walk toward it. Its parchment glows faintly as though lit from within. The map upon it is vast, a sweeping portrayal of the earth as a single living being. Continents curve like limbs. Oceans spiral like breath. Mountains rise like vertebrae. This map is a portrait, not of the world as we know it, but of the world as the monks believed it truly was. A creature of shifting form, moving with the slow cosmic rhythm of the heavens. You kneel beside it, watching the lines pulse softly, like veins flowing with starlight. And for a moment, in this quiet chamber, you feel the earth breathe beneath you. A long, slow breath. Ancient, steady, alive. Perhaps the monks were not mad. Perhaps they heard something we have forgotten how to hear. Perhaps the world is not as anchored as we believe. You rise slowly. The lanterns dim further. The room settles into deeper silence. The scrolls, the tablets, the shelves, all seem to withdraw into themselves, as though returning to their long slumber. You step backward toward the stone door. Dust drifts gently with your movement. The library feels softer now, like a dream beginning to fade. You cast one final glance at the shifting maps, the trembling coastlines, the breathing walls, and a gentle wonder settles within you. Not certainty, never certainty, but something softer. Perhaps the world is not fixed. Perhaps it has worn countless shapes we no longer remember. Perhaps geography is less truth and more memory, and memory too shifts beneath the weight of time. As you step beyond the threshold, the stone door slides closed behind you, sealing the library in darkness once more. Only the faint echo of starlit lanterns remains, lingering in the corners of your mind as sleep begins to draw near. Some voices only echo when the world is quiet enough to hear them. Tonight, you have heard one. The island that appeared in dreams first. It is said that some places enter the world not with thunder or surf, or the rising of stone from the sea, but with a whisper, a murmur that slips through the cracks of sleep, a trembling in a dream, a shape half seen in the mind's tidal dark. And so tonight, our story begins not with a map nor a monument, but with a journal, a simple sailor's journal, its pages warped by sea salt, its corners softened by time, its ink smudged into delicate ghosts of words. You open it gently. The scent of brine rises like a memory released. Moonlight glides across the page, as if searching for something familiar. And there, hidden among tangled notes of weather, tide, and waking sorrow, you find the first drawing, an island, drawn in trembling lines, as though the hand that traced it was unsure whether it belonged to this world or to the one that blossoms behind closed eyes. The sailor writes of a place that rose from the ocean only when the world slept. A place glimpsed not in daylight, but in those fragile hours between breath and forgetting. He writes of nights at sea when the sky hung low, marked by a pale crescent moon, and the waters below shimmered as though reflecting secrets not meant for waking minds. He writes of a horizon where nothing should have been. No land, no rock, no star-bright reflection. Yet a silhouette hovered there, unmoving, soft as mist. You turn the page. Ink blurs into shadow. Words dissolve into salt. Yet something lingers. A feeling, an echo, a pull as gentle as a tide. The journal leads you further, drawing you into the sailor's memory, into the soft procession of nights that carried him closer to the island. You drift with him through moonlit waters, where the sea lies smooth as obsidian, and the sky hangs heavy with stars that feel almost close enough to touch. A wind moves across the deck, carrying with it the pale cry of a distant gull. A sound too lonely, too out of place, for a night so still. Some nights, the sailor writes of storms, of waves rising in dark spirals as though reaching towards some unseen force. Yet even in those storms there were murmurs, faint and rhythmic, like bells chiming underwater. No compass could find their source. No chart traced their direction. But the sailor swore that the bells called him, not with urgency, but with a kind of yearning that slipped beneath fear and tugged gently at the heart. "Follow," they said, though their voices were made of wind and distance. "Follow," though he did not know what waited. In forgotten coastal villages, the story grows thicker. The journal describes towns where fishermen, old and bent like driftwood, spoke of hearing the same distant bells at night. They swore the sound drifted across the water from a place just beyond the edge of certainty. A place marked by the moon and erased by the dawn. A place where trees glowed faintly from within, as though they carried a light older than fire. Some villagers whispered that the island was a sanctuary, a refuge for all knowledge lost to tide and flame. Others insisted it was a mirage meant to draw greedy souls away from the safety of familiar shores. But all agreed on one thing: the island appeared only to those whose hearts were quiet enough to hear its calling. "Perhaps it chooses its visitors," one villager said, hands trembling around a cup of warm broth. "Or perhaps it chooses those who will not disturb its dreaming." You close your eyes for a moment and let the soft rhythm of waves fill your mind. When you open them again, you are no longer in the village, nor on a ship, but somewhere far between both. On a sea made of starlight and shadow, the sailor's words have carried you here. The moon hangs overhead, full and pale, its glow stretching across the water like a silent path. And there, just at the place where sky and sea merge, you see it. A silhouette, barely there. Soft as breath. An island. Not bold, not grand, but quiet. As if it belongs more to the dream than to the waking world. You move closer. The waves hush themselves into long, slow sighs. The air smells of warm foliage and moonlit earth. A softness settles around your shoulders, like a veil woven from memory. And suddenly, the island is no longer distant. It is here. Your foot touches the sand that glows faintly under the moon, as though lit from beneath the surface. It is cool, smooth, unbroken. No footprints lead further. The air is warm and tinged with the scent of unfamiliar flowers, their petals stirring in the gentlest breeze. The foliage surrounding you shimmers not with dew, but with light. A quiet luminescence pulsing like a heartbeat. Trees rise tall, their trunks pale and smooth, their leaves whispering in patterns you cannot understand. Their glow is not bright enough to banish shadow, but soft enough to give the darkness shape. You walk slowly, careful not to disturb this place that feels like a held breath. Every step echoes faintly, as though the ground responds to your presence. Somewhere in the distance you hear it. The bells. Not loud, not clear, just a gentle chime, like the edge of a distant memory brushing against your thoughts. A path forms before you, or perhaps it was always there, hidden beneath the shimmering leaves. You follow it through archways of glowing branches and past pools that reflect the moon in ripples shaped like spirals. The island feels dreamed. Yes, that is the word. Dreamed into existence. Or perhaps dreaming itself into you. You reach a clearing where a great stone rests, half buried, covered in soft moss that glows like embers. Symbols are carved into its surface. Spirals, stars, crescent arcs. One symbol resembles an eye. Another, a wave. Another, a simple dot surrounded by a circle like the moon surrounded by silence. You touch the stone lightly. It is warm, as though it remembers the hands that carved it long ago. And beneath your fingertips, for just a moment, you feel the faint pulse of something alive. Not creature, not root, not flame. Something deeper. The island itself, as though it breathes. Some believe the island was a sanctuary, its glowing trees protecting knowledge lost to storms, fires, and the quiet erosion of time. Others tell of monks who lived here once. Silent, wandering souls who preserved secrets not meant for kingdoms or kings, but for those who sought truth in calm solitude. Perhaps the bells you heard were once their tools of ceremony, or warnings, or welcome signs to weary travelers. And yet, there are darker tales. Stories of sailors who found the island and returned with eyes filled with a hollow, shimmering light. They spoke of visions, of ancient truths that felt too heavy to carry, of landscapes shifting like breath beneath the moon. The island gave them knowledge, some said. It also took something, perhaps their certainty, perhaps their sense of direction, or perhaps it whispered to them a truth not meant to be held in the daylight world. You sit beside the moss-covered stone and listen to the island. It does not speak with words, nor with anything so bold as sound. But there is a hum, the faintest vibration, like the echo of a tide turning deep beneath the ocean floor. It brings you a feeling rather than a message. Not all places belong to the waking world. Some places drift between dream and memory, between ocean and sky, between presence and absence. The island's glow dims slightly. The bells fade into an almost silence. You rise slowly. The path behind you seems softer now, edges blurred, as though already dissolving. You walk back toward the shore, and with each step, the island fades. Not vanishing, not collapsing, but becoming less distinct. Shifting into a softer version of itself. By the time you reach the water, the trees glow only faintly. The sand beneath your feet seems more like mist than earth. You look over your shoulder. Where the island stood, there is now only moonlight. Only silence. Only the memory of a shape that might never have existed at all. Or perhaps it exists only where memories sleep. The journal closes in your hands. The ink grows still. And the island, the one that appeared in dreams first, returns to its realm, beneath the silence, where memory fades where the moon marks the boundary between what is and what might be. What remains is a feeling, a soft ache, a gentle wonder. Perhaps the island is still there, somewhere between waking and sleep, waiting for those quiet enough to hear its bells again. The mapmaker's lantern of liquid starlight. It is said that certain lights are not meant to guide the feet, but the mind. Lights that do not banish darkness but soften it, revealing not what stands before us, but what lies beneath memory, beneath silence, beneath the slow turning breath of the world. And tonight, you stand in the presence of one such light. A single lantern glows in the darkness, a small delicate vessel of glass, cradling within it a shimmering liquid that pulses gently, softly, like the heartbeat of something celestial resting between worlds. The glow is faint now, a pale echo of what it once was. But even in its fading state, the lantern casts a light that does not fall on surfaces so much as it reveals the stories hidden there. The air around it tastes of dust and ink and something else. Something faintly metallic, as though the stars themselves once melted into this very room. You stand in the entrance of an abandoned workshop, the floor scattered with curled parchment, half-finished maps, and smooth stones that shimmer when your shadow brushes them. The lantern floats gently at the center of the room, its light pulsing like a memory, trying not to be forgotten. This was once the home of the forgotten mapmaker, a man both revered and doubted, both scholar and dreamer, both cartographer and mystic. He believed that starlight held the memory of all lands ever shaped, that every coastline, every mountain, every river, carved by time left its imprint not only on the earth, but also in the night sky. And so he sought not the land itself, but its reflection in the heavens. You step across the creaking wooden floor. Dust gathers around your ankles in soft spirals, as though stirred by unseen hands. The lantern brightens as you draw near, casting gentle beams across the walls. The maps pinned there shift slightly, or perhaps the shadows shift instead. Either way, the world depicted upon them never seems to stay still. One map shows a coastline that curves like a crescent moon, but as the lantern's pulse grows stronger bare, the crescent straightens, extends, and becomes the suggestion of a continent half lost to time. Another map shows two mountain ranges running parallel. Yet as the starlight touches them, one fades, while another rises elsewhere, as though remembering an ancient form. Perhaps the mapmaker saw the world not as it is, but as it once was or might have been. Or perhaps the lantern reveals the shapes the world dreamt of becoming. You reach toward the nearest table. A cluster of stones lies upon it, their surfaces smooth and pale. When your fingers graze one, it glows faintly. A soft, oceanic shimmer, as though lit from within by trapped moonlight. Carvings appear on its surface in that glow. Spirals, stars, lines that resemble coastlines and mountain ridges. The glow fades when you release the stone. You breathe out slowly. This place feels fragile, as though too strong a breath might scatter the last traces of the mapmaker's life into the wind. You walk deeper into the workshop. The shelves are crowded with scrolls tied with frayed ribbon, ink pots dried into crusts, and compasses whose needles point not north, but towards some unseen direction. Perhaps toward memory, perhaps toward starlight. On one shelf, you find a fragment of parchment bearing a line of the mapmaker's handwriting. It reads, "Land remembers its own shape even when we forget." Beside it lies another fragment. Follow the stars, for they are the world's oldest cartographers. You trace the ink with your fingertip. It flakes slightly, centuries brittle. Whispers tell us that the mapmaker rarely ventured out by day. He worked by twilight, when the first stars emerged and the lantern glowed brightest. He believed that the world whispered its secrets only in the hours between light and dark, when silence draped itself gently over the land. In forgotten corners of the earth, some say he carried the lantern to the edges of deserts, to the mouths of caves, to cliffs overlooking ancient oceans. Wherever he walked, the lantern revealed something. A coastline hidden beneath present seas, a path swallowed by jungle roots, a mountain lost to erosion and time. He drew these revelations not with certainty, but with reverence, as though each stroke of his ink was a prayer offered to the world itself. The lantern flickers suddenly, drawing your gaze. Its liquid starlight pulses faster for a moment, swirling within the glass like a tiny self-contained galaxy. The room shifts subtly. The walls seem to breathe. The maps tremble. Even dust motes settle as though listening. You kneel beside the lantern. Its glow bathes your hands, your face, your breath. For an instant, you see something. Not with your eyes, but with the soft place behind your thoughts. A coastline you've never known, curving like a crescent of silver sand beneath an unfamiliar moon. A line of mountains towering into a sky so deeply blue it almost seems unreal. A path through an ancient forest lit by the glow of unseen creatures. And then, a city of pale stone, rising from an island that no map now remembers. Its towers shimmer as though carved from starlight itself. Then the vision fades. Your breath returns slowly. You realize, with a soft ache, that the lantern is dimming. Perhaps the starlight within it is nearly spent. Or perhaps the lantern has offered all it wished to offer. You rise slowly and continue exploring the room. On the far wall, you find a massive map, one that spans the entire length of the wooden boards behind it. It is more detailed than the others, yet more abstract. Shorelines blend into cloud banks. Mountains rise into spirals. Rivers meander like threads of silver wind. The entire surface shimmers faintly with the lantern's last light. But beneath the shimmer, you see crumbled parchment edges, ink running thin, colors fading like old dreams. The mapmaker never finished this one. Or perhaps he could not. Perhaps the world shifted too quickly for any hand to capture. Perhaps the lantern's revelations were too fleeting. Or perhaps the world has too many shapes for one map to hold. The lantern dims further. Its pulse slows. Its glow softens. The liquid inside settles like a final breath. You kneel beside it again. The room feels heavier now, as though the silence has thickened into something sacred. You lean closer and see your reflection in the faint light. Not clear, not sharp, but blurred, as though the lantern shows you not your face, but the memory of your face. And you wonder, did the lantern truly reveal the world's forgotten shapes? Or did it reveal something else? Something hidden beneath your own memory? Something older than history? Something quieter than truth? Something like longing? Or wonder? Or recognition? Yes, you think. Perhaps the lantern illuminated the shapes from within us. The ones we carry unknowingly. The ones whispered into our dreams by the land beneath our feet. The lantern flickers one last time. Then its light contracts inward, a single soft pulse like a sigh, and the room returns to shadow. You rise slowly, your steps quiet, your breath soft. The maps around you feel different now. Not fixed, not final, but alive in their potential. Perhaps the world is not a static truth, but a shifting horizon, a long exhale waiting to reshape itself. Perhaps we never stopped learning its contours, only stopped listening. Perhaps the map maker knew this, and the lantern was his way of teaching others to see not with their eyes, but with their quietest selves. You take one last look at his unfinished map. Its lines shimmer faintly, as though something in the parchment still remembers starlight. You leave the workshop, stepping into the cool air beyond its doorway. The night is deep, silent, uncertain. But in that uncertainty, you feel a gentle peace. A peace born of knowing that some truths are not meant to be found. Some voices only echo when we are ready to hear them. Some lights guide not outward, but inward. And the lantern, the map-maker's lantern of liquid starlight, has left you with this softness. The world may hold forgotten shapes, but so do we. The temple of the unfinished world. It is said that in the vast stillness of certain deserts, where the dunes stretch like sleeping oceans and the air itself feels ancient enough to remember forgotten ages, there lies a path that does not appear until nightfall. A stone path, narrow, silent, carved not by hands but by intention. It winds across the sands in a soft curve, glowing faintly beneath moonlight, as though dusted with the residue of long-vanished stars. No matter how many storms bury it, the path returns each dusk. A quiet invitation for those patient enough or lost enough to follow it. And tonight, you follow it. The desert night breathes cool air across your skin, its hush as deep as a held breath. Above, the moon circles slowly, its pale light spilling across the dunes like a soft veil. As you walk, the sand shifts beneath your feet in slow ripples. The darkness ahead trembles with a faint silver glow. It is not fire, not torchlight, but something older, something woven from moon and stone. The path leads you toward a silhouette, a structure rising from the dunes like a memory struggling to remain. A temple. Its walls hum softly under moonlit breath, vibrating with a frequency so low you feel it more in your bones than in your ears. As you step closer, the stone seems to shimmer, almost as if the moonlight is being absorbed, held, and slowly released. The temple of the unfinished world. A place whispered of in stories told only at the edge of sleep, when the mind is most open and the heart has loosened its grip on certainty. You pause at the entrance. The doorway is tall, arched, carved with spirals that resemble both waves and drifting clouds. Symbols older than any alphabet line the doorframe. Curves, crescents, star-marked dots, and patterns like petals opening or land-splitting like soft clay. You step inside. The air cools instantly. Dust drifts gently in the lanternless dark, glimmering like tiny suspended galaxies caught in a frozen moment. The walls greet you with a faint hum, soft, continuous, as though the stone itself is breathing in quiet meditation. Then you see them, murals, vast, sprawling murals, covering every wall, every column, every surface within reach of moonlight. They do not depict the world as you know it, not as fixed continents, not as the familiar pattern of oceans and land. Instead, the murals show continents in motion, unanchored, drifting across the canvas like floating dreams. Some stretch outward in long tendrils. Some curl inward like sleeping creatures. Some touch, then separate. Some rise upward in spirals, while others sink into swirling oceans painted in deep lapis hues. You walk slowly along the mural's length, your fingertips brushing the carvings. The stone is warm beneath your skin. Landforms split like petals, delicate, unfolding. Mountains rise like sleeping giants stretching their limbs toward the sky. Rivers wind across impossible terrains as though following the direction of a dream, not gravity. Some landscapes appear half-formed, as though painted in the middle of their own transformation. Others are nothing more than shadows, waiting for their shapes to emerge. This is no map of the world as it was, nor of the world as it is. It is the world in the process of becoming. A world forever in motion, a world still unfinished. It is said that priests once gathered here at twilight. Not priests of any particular deity, but contemplatives. Those who believed the earth itself was a living thing still unfolding, still dreaming, still forming its own body in slow cosmic breaths. Some believe the earth rearranged as itself in ages long before memory, continents sliding, oceans swelling and collapsing, mountains emerging only to fall back into dust. Others whispered that the world never stopped changing, only that humans lost the patience to see it. To those priests, the true map of the world was never finished. It was a story in progress, a whisper passed from one era to the next, a dream slowly remembering itself. You imagine them now, standing in this very hall, cloaked in simple robes, their faces turned toward the murals as the last light of dusk touched the stone. They would have studied the walls not as art, but as testimony. Not as depiction, but as revelation. They believed that the earth could not be captured in a single form, that to define it was to diminish it, that to map it was to misunderstand its essence. Perhaps they were right. You walk deeper into the temple. The air thickens with a sacred stillness that feels like stepping into a memory that does not belong to you. Columns rise around you like trunks of ancient trees. Effigies of land masses flow across them like vines. Your footsteps echo softly, drifting into the distance like fading thoughts. Finally, a wide opening reveals the central chamber. You stop. Breath stills. Before you stands a great disk of polished stone, as wide as a pond and smooth as a mirror. Its surface is engraved with a map, but not like any map you have seen before. The center is filled with swirling continents, their shapes merging and diverging in eternal motion. Lines ripple outward in wave-like curves, as though the land itself is exhaling. But the outer edges of the stone are different. There, the engraving dissolves into swirling dust patterns, as though the mapmaker lifted their hand just as the world reached a place not yet ready to be recorded. An intentional incompleteness, a deliberate surrender to uncertainty. You kneel beside the disc. The polished stone reflects a faint version of your face, but your reflection is blurred, as though the map does not wish to show you as fixed either. Perhaps it sees you as part of the unfinished world too, a being always in the process of a becoming. You place your hand gently on the outer edge of the disc. The stone warms beneath your touch. The swirling patterns seem to shift. Not visibly, but with the subtle motion felt beneath the skin. The hum of the walls deepens. A whisper seems to rise from the floor itself. Not a word, not a voice, a feeling. A soft, ancient sense that the world is bigger and more fluid than your waking mind has ever allowed. You let the sensation wash over you. You see oceans swallowing mountains with the ease of dreams. You see mountains rising from nothing but the earth's slow breath. You see land drifting like petals carried on unseen currents. You see the world as something neither finished nor broken, but forever rewriting itself with every age. Perhaps the priests knew this. Perhaps they dedicated their lives to a truth humans rarely accept. That completion is a myth. That all things, worlds, lives, dreams, exist in states of becoming. You open your eyes. The chamber is quiet again. The hum softens into a gentle vibration you can barely feel. The murals watch silently. The stone disc holds its secrets with patient grace. You rise slowly and walk to the edge of the chamber. The moonlight pours in through a single opening high in the ceiling. Its beam falls gently across the unfinished portion of the map, illuminating the swirling dust patterns like constellations drifting across the ground. For a moment, it feels as though the earth itself is in that beam of light. Incomplete, beautiful, waiting to unfold. Perhaps the world is not a fixed creation, but a story still being written. Perhaps every coastline you know has other versions, hidden beneath distant waves or buried in forgotten epochs. Perhaps every mountain has once been a valley. Perhaps every desert was once a garden. Perhaps nothing is as permanent as memory insists. You take a slow breath and let the thought settle. Some truths do not need answers. Some questions are sacred precisely because they remain open. Some mysteries are meant to be touched, not solved. Before you leave, you look back once more at the temple of the unfinished world. The stone path beyond the entrance glimmers faintly. The walls hum. The murals shift subtly as the moon slips behind a cloud. The entire temple feels as though it is exhaling, a long, soft breath that has waited ages to be heard. You step into the desert night. The air is cool, quiet, wide. Behind you, the temple fades into shadow, its walls blending with the dunes as though returning to the dream from which it came. Perhaps it was never meant to be found easily. Perhaps it reveals itself only to those who do not seek answers, but presence. Those who understand that the world is unfinished, and that this is not a flaw, but a gift. As you walk back along the stone path, the moon guiding your steps, a soft knowing settles in your heart. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And tonight, you have heard one. The voice of a world still dreaming itself into being. The river that carried forgotten borders. It is said that some rivers do not flow across land. They flow across memory. They wind not only between forests and fields, but between centuries, carrying in their drifting currents the faintest traces of worlds long dissolved into dust. And so tonight, as the silver moon rises quietly above the horizon, you find yourself standing at the edge of one such river. A quiet river, drifting through the moonlit grasslands, its waters calm, smooth as polished glass. reflecting the pale sky above like a liquid mirror. The air is still, soft, filled with that fragile silence that belongs only to remote places, unbothered by the passage of ages. When you inhale, you taste night on your tongue. Cool, clean, carrying the faint scent of ancient soil and dew-covered reeds. And beneath it, if you breathe deeply enough, you sense something else. A story, a memory not your own. Something the river is carrying. Something the river has always carried. As you walk along its banks, the grass sways gently around your ankles, each blade shimmering with moonlit silver. The river moves beside you in slow, thoughtful coils, its surface broken only by the soft ripple of unseen fish turning deep below. And soon you begin to see them, the markers, stones resting half buried in the soil, carved with symbols so old that their meanings tremble on the edge of forgetting. Lines, curves, boundaries, borders, some etched deep and bold as though insisting on permanence. Others faint as breath, barely visible beneath lichen and dust. You kneel beside one stone. Its edges are softened by time, its carvings nearly erased. A straight line runs across it. Sharp, deliberate, a scar carved in stone. Once, perhaps, this line divided something important. A land, a people, a belief, a world. Now it divides nothing. The land around you is open, unclaimed, unguarded. No armies march here, no flags rise, no walls stand. All that remains is the stone and the river beside it. A quiet reminder that once, someone tried to divide the earth and the earth. Patient, ancient, soft in its own slow way. Eventually reclaimed the wound. You rise. The river glints in the moonlight as if amused by the very idea that a boundary could hold against its whisper. Wanderers once followed this river. Pilgrims, nomads, merchants, mystics. People who believed that the river's gentle drift carried the memories of old empires. Empires whose names have long since dissolved into the silt of language. It is said that these wanderers walked its length not to reach a destination, but to listen, to learn, for the river was thought to speak. Not in words, but in impressions, in the hush of reeds, in the curling of mist along its surface, in the way the moonlight struck its waves. Some even believe that the river remembered every border ever carved beside it, every kingdom that rose, every treaty signed, every conflict that left its echo on the land. And perhaps, if one walked far enough, one could find the boundary between what was and what might have been. You continue along the river's edge. The grassland widens. Mist unravels slowly across the water, swirling like a ghostly fabric dragged by a soft current. The moon watches as though listening as well. You come upon another cluster of stones, 3 of them, arranged in a row like guardians watching the river. Their carvings are intricate, spirals wrapped around parallel lines, one symbol repeating across each stone with delicate precision. You brush the surface with your fingertips. The stone is cool, damp with dew, and suddenly you feel it. A faint echo beneath your hand. A sensation like the beat of a long-forgotten drum. Like footsteps. Like the murmurs of people who once stood here arguing, pleading, deciding. You close your eyes. A faint vision rises. Not a clear image, but a feeling. a land divided, a river serving as witness. And then, nothing. Just the quiet river, the soft grass, the night. Perhaps some memories are too old to be recalled, but too powerful to truly disappear. The river narrows as you walk further, thinning into a silver thread beneath the stars. The mist gathers more thickly here, curling around stones and drifting across your ankles, as though curious about your presence. You feel as if you have stepped into a place untouched by centuries. Along its banks lie the remains of villages swallowed by time, stone foundations barely peeking from the earth, fragments of pots scattered like forgotten seeds, the faint outline of what might once have been a gathering hall. You pause beside a broken wall, its stones cracked, half buried. Someone once leaned here. Someone once lived here. Someone once loved and worried, and gathered around firelight beneath the same moon that now watches you. The river flows quietly beside the ruins. You can almost imagine it whispering to them. A soft lullaby meant to soothe their fading presence. Everything returns, it seems to say. Everything becomes part of the whole again. Borders, empires, villages, memories, all dissolved in the gentle persistence of time. You keep moving. The river is smaller now, winding like a thin ribbon through the soft gas. Its voice is quieter here. Not a murmur, not a ripple, but something like a hush, a sacred hush, as though the river is guiding you into its most secret memory. And then you see another stone, larger than the others, standing tall like a sentinel. Its carvings form a map, but one you do not recognize. Lines divide the land in unfamiliar shapes. Circles mark cities whose names have never reached your ears. A long curve indicates the river itself. Yet the river appears much wider, much stronger, much more central than it feels now. You realize this map belongs to a world that no longer exists. A world lost beneath dust, beneath shifting sands, beneath the slow flow of centuries. You feel a subtle ache in your chest. If borders fade, if maps dissolve, then what truly remains? Not the lines, not the kingdoms, only the river that remembers. You continue walking. The night deepens. The stars thicken above you like scattered grains of salt on across a darkened table. The river becomes thinner still, a thread of liquid moonlight weaving between rocks and shadows. You listen. Its voice is almost silent, almost. And in that near silence, you sense the truth that the river has been trying to tell you. Borders are fragile things, made not by land nor by rivers, but by people who needed certainty in a world that never promised it. Borders shift, fade, vanish, sometimes by the force of wind, sometimes by the persistence of water, sometimes by the slow forgetting that occurs when no one remains to defend or remember them. The river flows on with quiet dignity, unconcerned with the rise and fall of human lines. Its path is older than maps, older than borders, older than the languages etched into the stones beside it. You kneel beside the narrowing water. The river reflects your face, soft, blurred, as though suggesting that even we are not as fixed as we believe. Behind you, the grass rustles softly. Above you, the stars shimmer. Around you, ancient stones keep their silent vigil. And before you, the river continues on into the dim horizon. A silver thread woven through the dark. A memory woven through time. A whisper carried across ages that says, everything changes, everything shifts, everything returns to the whole. You rise slowly. The river keeps moving. The stones keep watching. The night keeps breathing. You take one step back from the bank, then another. And the last thought that drifts through you as the river fades into the dark is soft, gentle, and filled with the quiet truth of this place. Perhaps borders were never meant to hold. Perhaps they were only temporary lines drawn across a world that prefers continuity. Some voices only echo when the world grows silent enough to hear them. Tonight, you have heard one, the voice of the river that carried forgotten borders, the kingdom that moved with the seasons. It is said that in forgotten corners of the earth, there are kingdoms that leave no ruin behind, no broken stones, no crumbling towers, no monuments etched with the names of rulers. Only absence, only quiet, only the faintest trace of the footsteps pressed into the long memory of the land. And tonight, under a dawn sky trembling with pale gold, you stand before the valley that once held one such kingdom. A kingdom that moved with the seasons. A kingdom whose people believed that to remain still was to betray the rhythm of the earth itself. The valley stretches wide and silent before you. Its grass glows softly in the early light, shifting in slow waves as the wind drifts through it in gentle, ancient currents. This place feels like a held breath. Not empty, but waiting. You step forward. Dew gathers around your ankles, cool as morning starlight. The air carries the faint scent of sage and sleep, a fragrance untouched by time. And then you see them. The first traces of the kingdom, faint circular depressions in the earth, half overgrown with dancing grass, barely noticeable unless you know what to look for. These were the foundations of homes that did not remain. Stone rings that once held wooden posts, woven walls, roofs shaped like rising moons. The homes could be lifted, dismantled, moved across the valley with the changing of seasons, the shifting of stars, the breath of the world. The people believed that the land beneath their feet shifted each year. Not violently, not dramatically, but subtly, like a sleeper turning beneath a blanket. To stay in one place was to resist that movement. To resist was to be torn away, slowly, spiritually, like a leaf refusing to fall with autumn. So they moved. Not as wanderers, nor as exiles, but as companions to the earth's own rhythm. You walk deeper into the valley, the dawn grows brighter, spilling pale ribbons of gold across the hilltops. The grass shimmers, as though dusted with fragments of forgotten constellations. As you move, the wind carries with it echoes, soft, faint, the suggestion of footsteps long since faded. Perhaps memory lingers differently in valleys like this. Places unscarred by stone or metal, places shaped only by breath and time and the gentle unfolding of seasons. You find another foundation ring, and another, and another. Some are nearly perfect circles, others waver as though shaped by hands that trusted the land to guide their geometry. You kneel beside one. Grass has grown where the hearth once lay. Pebbles, soft and rounded, form a half-moon shape near the edge. The stones feel warm beneath your touch, despite the coolness of morning. You close your eyes. For a moment, you imagine the fire that once burned here. Embers glowing, voices rising in low harmony, children curled beside their elders. listening to stories of stars and seasons and the shifting of the world. Perhaps they believed that the sky above reflected the land below, and that by following constellations, they followed the very map of the Earth's breadth. Nearby, you find a series of stone markers rising from the ground like the ribs of a buried creature. Each stone is small, no taller than your knee, but carved with symbols, arrows, spirals, patterns resembling shifting suns. You trace one of the spirals with your finger. It curves inward, then out again, like a tide of stone. Some believe these markers pointed toward forgotten solstices. Not the solstices we know today, but solstices that existed when the world tilted differently, when seasons drifted in quiet, ancient patterns. The people followed these markers like a celestial clock made of dust and stone. When the shadows fell in certain ways, they lifted their homes, gathered their tools, and walked. They did not question, they did not resist. They moved because to stay was to fall out of step with the great cosmic dance. Perhaps that is why no ruins stand. Why no city walls remain. Why no monuments mark this place on any map. Because the kingdom itself was never meant to remain. As you continue walking, the valley begins to shift. Not physically, but in atmosphere. The light softens, the air thickens, an ancient stillness settles around you like a veil, and suddenly you sense something. A presence, not a person, not a sound, not even a memory. Something subtler, a feeling, like someone just stepped past you though no one is there. You pause. Your breath slows. The grass sways in a new rhythm, a pattern you hadn't noticed before, as though the land itself is remembering how it moved when the kingdom still walked with it. Somewhere up the valley, a distant bird calls. 3 notes, soft and lonely. And then you see it. A line in the earth, faint, almost erased. A path. It curves gently, disappearing over a hill, reappearing in the next dip of land, then fading again. A migration trail. The road the kingdom once followed. You step onto it. The soil is smoother here, worn down by countless feet that once walked its length. You walk slowly. Each step feels like an echo of a step taken long before you. You imagine lines of people, carrying their homes, their stories, their children, their rituals, walking with purpose, walking with gentleness, walking with the seasons. Perhaps they believed that the earth was alive, and that to love it was to move with it. Perhaps they knew something we have forgotten. Something about change, about time, about the danger of holding too tightly to one place. The path leads you toward the far edge of the valley. There, the light shifts again. The sun rises fully behind a ridge, casting long shadows that stretch across the grass like fingers pointing toward memory. A weathered stone stands alone. Not a marker this time. Not an altar. Something else. A stele. Tall, narrow, cracked with age. Its surface is carved deeply. Not with words, but with a map. A map that spirals outward from a single point in the center. The lines twist and turn, mirroring the shape of whirlwinds, ocean currents, and the migration of stars across sky. You brush the carving gently. It is smooth where countless hands have traced its lines before you. At the stele's base, you find a faint inscription. Not in any language you know, but the shapes feel familiar. like footprints in dust, scattered yet intentional. You feel a subtle ache rise in your chest. This was their center, their origin point, the place from which all movement began. Some say this stone marked the moment when the kingdom first understood that the earth was changing beneath their feet. Others believe it marked the place where they swore an oath to follow the seasons, the stars, and the shifting pulse of the land. You close your eyes again, and beneath the silence, you hear something. Not a sound, not a word. A rhythm, a cadence, a distant echo of hundreds of footsteps moving in harmony. Footsteps long gone. Footsteps that once carried a kingdom across this valley. And perhaps footsteps that still continue somewhere beyond the reach of maps and memory. You open your eyes. The valley looks the same. Quiet, soft, bathed in dawn. But something within you has shifted. The grass rustles as if stirred by the remains of a passing presence. A presence that has not ended, only moved on. You look toward the horizon, where the path dissolves into golden haze. Perhaps the kingdom continues still, traveling in rhythms too subtle for modern eyes, moving with seasons we no longer feel. Perhaps they wander in places just beyond the edges of sight, where memory fades and new dreams form. Perhaps they left no ruins, because they needed none. Their legacy is not stone, nor city, nor monument. Their legacy is movement. The trust that change is not loss, but life. The wisdom that to hold still is to fall behind the earth's breath. You take one step back. The valley glows softly around you. Its grass is golden, its stones warm, its paths whispering with ancient memory. And as the sun rises higher, washing the land in gentle brilliance, you feel a truth settle quietly within you. Perhaps the kingdom was never gone. Perhaps it simply moved beyond the edges of what maps can hold. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. Tonight, you have heard one. The soft, persistent whisper of a kingdom that moved with the seasons. The celestial chamber below, the mountain's heart. It is said that mountains hold more than stone. They hold breath. They hold memory. They hold the soft, ancient truths whispered to them by winds that have circled the earth since before time had a name. And so tonight, your journey begins at the foot of one such mountain, a towering, silent colossus whose peaks curl into the dusk like the spines of a sleeping creature. The air is cool here, sacred, carrying the faint scent of moss and something metallic, as though starlight itself has seeped into the rock. Ahead lies a narrow opening, a hidden entrance carved into the mountainside, barely visible beneath veils of creeping vine and dust, the color of fading moonlight. A gate not meant for many. A threshold meant for those who know how to listen. You step forward. The darkness inside accepts you with a gentleness that feels almost like recognition. As you pass into the narrow tunnel, the world outside fades. Its sounds, its movement, its weight. Here, the air grows still, thick with the quiet patience of ages. Your footsteps echo softly against the stone walls, each one a small pulse in the long, slow heart of the mountain. The passage turns, and turns again, then widens. A faint glow rises ahead. Not warm like fire, nor cold like moonlight, but something in between. A gentle blue radiance that seems to vibrate with a soft hum. like a star holding its breath. You emerge into a vast hollow, a chamber carved deep into the mountain's core. Its ceiling rises high, arching like the inside of an ancient cathedral. But instead of stone, it glitters with crystalline formations that catch and bend the faintest starlight into wandering beams of soft blue. The entire room seems to pulse, not visibly, but in sensation, as though it is breathing around you. This is the celestial chamber, a place spoken of only in fragments, in half-remembered myths, told by those who once pressed their ears and ears to the earth's beating heart. You step forward slowly, and the chamber welcomes you with a light that grows just barely brighter, as though stirred by your presence. Spread across the floor and rising along the walls are maps. Not maps drawn in ink or painted on parchment, but maps etched into the very stone. Their lines glowing softly, their curves shimmering with the faintest echo of the sky above. Continents are drawn here, but not as you know them. They shift, not literally, but in suggestion, in posture, in essence. Their outlines shimmer as though they remember older forms, like dancers changing steps between centuries. Some look familiar. Others resemble distant dreams of lands never recorded in human memory. Rivers twist where deserts now lie. Oceans swell where mountains stand. And latitudes curve in shapes that feel as ancient as the first breath of the planet. You kneel beside one glowing line and trace it with your fingertip. It vibrates faintly, like brushing a string of light. This place is alive with ancient knowledge. Maps layered upon maps, each one a memory of how the earth once shaped itself beneath the instruction of the stars. Whispers tell us that long before the earliest civilizations rose from riverbeds and valleys, there lived astronomers whose temples were not built beneath the sky, but within the mountains that touched it. These astronomers believed that the earth and the heavens were bound in a silent conversation. Two breaths entwined, rising and falling in cycles too vast for any single lifetime to witness. They listened not with their ears, but with their entire beings. Pressing palms against stone, feeling for the subtle vibrations that signaled the shifting of the continents, the swelling of the seas, the turning of the world in its ancient cradle. They built the celestial chamber as a sanctuary, where earth and sky could meet, where starlight could seep into stone, and stone could reflect its memory back. Perhaps that is why the maps here seem alive, etched not only with the shape of land, but with the rhythm of time. As you wander deeper into the chamber, you notice carvings spiraling outward, resembling galaxies collapsed into stone form. Symbols etched beside them resemble the phases of moons long forgotten, moons that may have once accompanied the earth before drifting away into the vast ocean of night. You pause before one carving that shows a continent swirling like a spiral shell. The glow beneath it pulses faintly, like the rising and falling of a tide. You place your hand against it and feel a warmth that does not belong to stone. The mountain shifts slightly around you. A soft rumble, so faint you almost mistake it for your own breath. And then, high above you, the crystalline ceiling brightens. Starlight pours through the crystal veins, not from within the chamber, but from some hidden fissure through which the night sky must be peering. It feels as though the stars themselves are illuminating the maps, recalling their own ancient guidance. And in that starlight, you see more. Lines that were hidden now glow pale blue. Curves that were faint now brighten into clarity. Patterns emerge. Cycles, rhythms, currents. Continents move not across water, but across time. Oceans breathe in long, slow pulses. The earth shifts like a living being, adjusting itself in sleep. It is mesmerizing. You stand in silence and simply watch as the chamber hums with ancient knowing. In forgotten corners of the world, teachers once said that the earth is older than we can comprehend. Not just in years, but in shapes. That it has worn many faces like moons wear phases. That continents are but the stories the planet tells in a language of stone, tides, and starlight. The maps around you seem to confirm this. Each one a chapter in the Earth's long narrative. Written not with ink, but with the memory of the mountains and the breath of the cosmos. As the starlight deepens, the maps shift again. Their glow dimming and brightening in a rhythm that feels familiar. Like a heartbeat, like the pulse of something vast and steady. You place your palm on the stone floor. It is warm, alive with vibration, and for a moment, you feel connected to something ancient. Not just the mountain, not just the chamber, but the earth itself. The chamber begins to dim. The blue light retreats like a tide drawing back to sea. The glowing lines fade into soft outlines, then into shadows, then into nothing but the memory of their shapes. You remain still, your breath slow, your body calm. You do not mourn the fading light. Some wisdom, you sense, is meant to be glimpsed only briefly. Not held, not captured, but witnessed like the tail of a comet streaking across the night. When the last of the starlight drains from the crystals above, the chamber becomes dark again, quiet, solemn, suspended in ancient slumber. But the hum remains, soft and deep, as though the mountain is whispering beneath your feet. Perhaps it is the echo of those forgotten astronomers who once pressed their palms to the same stone. Perhaps it is the heartbeat of the cosmos itself, still resonating in the chamber's core. Or perhaps it is simply your own breath, mingling with the silence of the ancient world around you. You turn back toward the passageway. The faintest glimmer of dawn filters through the tunnel, reaching into the chamber like a shy golden hand. You take one last look. The celestial chamber remains still. A whisper of blue crystals, a memory of glowing lines, a sanctuary of silence. Its mysteries remain intact, and perhaps that is how it must be. For some truths, especially those shaped by starlight and cosmic tides, cannot be pinned down or carried away. They must be felt, like a tremor beneath the skin, or remembered, like a dream that fades upon waking, but leaves behind a quiet, tender ache. You step into the passage. The mountain breathes behind you. A slow, ancient exhale, carrying the echo of forgotten ages. As you emerge into the waking world, the sky has begun to brighten. The first rays of morning kiss the mountain's peaks, turning them gold. The silence feels different now. Not empty, but full. Full of things unnamed, of things unseen, of things that cannot be explained, but can always be felt. Perhaps the Earth's continents did once dance beneath the influence of unseen stars. Perhaps they still do. Perhaps everything is shaped by forces we have barely begun to understand. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. Tonight, in the quiet heart of the mountain, you have heard one, a whisper carried through stone, light, and time, and it will linger with you long after sleep has drifted gently in, the map that returned each time it was lost. It is said that some objects do not belong to any one person, nor to any one age. They belong to the world itself, appearing only when the quiet around them matches the quiet within them. And so tonight, in the gentle hush before sleep, our story begins with an absence that always grows into a presence. A map, one that disappears as easily as a breath fades on cold air, yet returns each time it is needed. Not when it is searched for, but when it is awaited. It emerges not with dramatic force, but with the softness of a memory rising from the deepest part of the mind. Dim at first, then growing clearer, as though dusting itself free from the shadows of forgotten centuries. It is said the map returns only to those who do not seek it, yet unknowingly carry space for it. And so, under a silver moon that hangs low over an abandoned monastery, you step into a place where its last whispers were heard. The monastery's gate yawns open, its wooden frame softened by time and weather, its hinges still carrying the faint scent of pine resin. The wind slides through its empty corridors like a gentle instrument, playing notes of dust and long-dormant echoes. The air smells of ink and damp stone. Not the sharp ink of fresh writing, but the soft, mellow ink that clings to parchment after generations have passed through it. You step inside. Your footsteps stir motes of dust that rise in slow spirals, glittering in the faint twilight filtering through the high cracked windows. Somewhere deeper within the halls, the faint suggestion of paper whispers against stone and tides, as if a page has just shifted or been placed down by an unseen hand. Whispers tell us that this monastery once sheltered philosophers, chroniclers, and stargazers who believed the world changed its shape not slowly, but constantly. Some believed land and sea moved in ways the human eye could not perceive. Others believed that memory, not geography, decided the shape of the world. All agreed on one thing: the map. It arrived here once, in a gust of wind that slipped beneath a locked door, carrying with it a parchment that fluttered to the floor before settling calmly, as though it had chosen this place to be seen. You enter a long, narrow hall lined with shelves carved from mountain stone. Many are empty. Some hold brittle scrolls whose ink has faded into pale ghosts. And on one shelf, the shelf closest to the far wall, lies a faint indentation where something once rested. Something the size of a map folded with care. You place your hand on the cold stone. It is not truly cold. A faint warmth lingers there, like the last trace of breath from someone who has just left the room. Perhaps the map was here recently. Or perhaps the stone simply remembers better than we do. They say the map chose its keepers. It revealed itself only when the world was ready to hear what it had to say. And each time it returned, its lines were different. Mountains shifted, seas widened, islands bloomed where none had existed before. Some thought this a trick of time, the parchment aging, the ink bleeding into new forms. Others believed the map was recording not the physical world, but the possible one. The world as it once dreamed itself to be. The world it might become again. The world hidden beneath layers of forgetting and remembering. Perhaps the map did not show geography. Perhaps it showed memory. You walk down the hall, your fingertips brushing the walls where cracks run like dried rivers. The silence here is different from ordinary silence. It feels purposeful, as though the space is waiting for you to ask a question you have not yet formed. You enter the central chamber, A round room with a domed ceiling carved with spirals and stars. The floor is smooth stone worn by countless footsteps over countless years. A single table stands in the center, its surface curved, as though carved to cradle something precious. You imagine the map resting there, its parchment trembling faintly, as though still alive with memories of lands shared shifting beneath celestial breath. You imagine its lines shimmering subtly, like light on water, changing shape each time a lantern flickered. No one has seen the map in many years. Yet, as you stand here, you sense it still. In the way the shadows quiver along the edges of the room, in the faint vibration of the air, in the feeling, soft and unmistakable, that something unseen is still present. As though the map left only moments before you arrived, or as though it watches from somewhere just beyond the veil of sight. You walk around the table. Its surface carries faint scratches, marks left by quills, elbows, ink jars, and the weight of contemplation. A small pool of dried ink rests in one corner, shaped strangely like a crescent moon. You place your hand near it, and the shadows along the walls shift slightly, as though responding to your nearness. Perhaps the map truly is not an object. Perhaps it is a presence, a phenomenon, an echo carried across centuries in search of readers, gentle enough to let it speak. You sit beside the table. Silence settles around you like a cloak woven from dust and time. You close your eyes. You breathe. And in the quiet, you sense something forming. Not a vision, not a voice, but a shape. A coastline unfurls in the back of your mind, smooth and drifting like a soft breath on a cold window. Mountains rise not with force, but with a slow blooming like crystals forming underground. Rivers branch like veins reaching outward. Islands shimmer, then fade, then shimmer again. The map is showing you something, not on parchment, but within the quiet of your own memory. You open your eyes. The chamber remains empty. The table still bare. But the lines linger inside you, shifting, changing, rearranging themselves as though drawn by an unseen hand. And you understand something. The map has not disappeared. It has returned. Not in form, but in impression. Not as an artifact, but as a question. A question meant not for the eyes, but for the heart. What is fixed? What is permanent? What shape does the world truly take? The one we draw, or the one we feel? Borders shift. Coastlines erode. Mountains crumble. Cities rise and fall like breaths. The world changes in ways too slow for us to notice until it has already become something new. Perhaps the map returns not to show us land, but to remind us the world is never fixed, and neither are we. You stand and walk toward the far end of the chamber. A window carved into the stone opens outward into night. A rectangle of deep twilight, filled with drifting dust and faint moonlit air. You step closer. The wind touches your face, cool and gentle. From this height, the world below looks soft, blurred, as though drawn in charcoal and then smudged by a thoughtful hand. Perhaps the map reflects this softness. Perhaps it shows the world not as it is, but as it might be in infinite variations. For every map is a choice, a decision, a moment in time captured and held. But the map that returns refuses to be held. It is a living thing. A reminder that certainty is a fragile illusion. You watch the horizon. Clouds drift slowly. The wind hums. The night stretches, patient and immense. And somewhere, perhaps near, perhaps far, you sense the faint trembling of parchment unfolding. A soft echo, a breath catching, a whisper rising. The map is returning. Not to this monastery, not to this room, but to someone, somewhere, who has grown quiet enough to receive it. Someone who understands that the world is fluid, and life is a long series of shifting lines. The monastery feels lighter now, as though something heavy has been lifted from its stones. Perhaps the map was here. Perhaps it never truly was. Perhaps it lives only in the spaces where silence deepens enough to allow memory to surface. You take one last look at the empty table. Its surface gleams faintly in the moonlit dark, as though brushed by invisible fingers. Perhaps it was never meant to be found. Perhaps it only ever appears to those ready to remember that nothing remains unchanged. Some voices only echo when the mind is quiet enough to hear. Tonight, you have heard one, a soft, shifting whisper carried on dust and starlight. The world is never fixed, and neither are you. The archive of erased horizons. It is said that at the edges of deserts, where sand meets silence and silence meets memory, some structures stand not to preserve history, but to protect us from remembering too much. And tonight, beneath a moon rising like a pale lantern over an ocean of silver dunes, you find one such structure, a place spoken of only in murmurs, in whispers, carried across wind-scoured plains, in half-forgotten legends that surface only when the mind drifts into drowsiness. The archive of erased horizons. You approach it slowly. It emerges from the sand like the ribcage of a sleeping giant. A low, carved entrance shaped by centuries of wind and smoothed by time's gentle insistence. The doorway stands framed in stone the color of dusk, veiled by a thin curtain of drifting dust. It feels less like an entrance and more like a memory waiting to be stepped into. With a soft breath, you cross the threshold. Inside, the world becomes still. The desert wind vanishes. The scent of sand fades. You are surrounded not by heat, nor cold, but by something else entirely. A quiet so deep, it feels ancient. The hall before you is carved directly into the heart of the desert stone, its ceiling arching overhead like the underside of a great fossilized shell. Shelves line the walls in endless rows, each one filled with scrolls. Blank scrolls. No ink, no maps, no writing, no drawings. Just pale parchment wrapped gently around wooden spines, their silence deeper than the room itself. You walk forward and pick up the nearest scroll. The parchment is smooth beneath your fingers, warm in a way that feels unsettling, as though touched by countless hands that have since drifted into dust. You hold it under the faint moonlight that slips through a crack in the stone ceiling, and then it happens. Not suddenly, but softly, like a tide drawing in. Faint lines appear. First the hint of a coastline, then the soft curve of a peninsula long swallowed by shifting seas. You inhale. The coastline glows faintly, as if painted not with ink, but with the memory of moonlight itself. Then the lines fade again, becoming blank parchment once more. You replace the scroll upon the shelf, your heart beats slow and steady in the cavernous silence. You move deeper into the archive. Rows upon rows of scrolls accompany your steps. Some rest neatly, others lean slightly as though exhaling beneath centuries of stillness. And as the moon shifts above and spills its light across the floor in soul silver arcs, images begin to appear. Not on all scrolls at once, not with any pattern, but in small flickering glimpses, as though the archive is breathing and revealing its secrets only between breaths. You pause beside a tall shelf and watch as the moonlight touches a cluster of scrolls. The scrolls shimmer. Then faint images bloom across them, lost coastlines, etched with pale curves, islands that no longer exist, their shapes hovering in the air like half-remembered dreams, rivers that once threaded their way across continents before being erased by drought or time, or the slow swallowing sands. The images are soft, ghost-like, as though the landscapes are aware that they no longer belong to this world. You reach for a scroll and unroll it gently. Its blank surface glows. You see a mountain range, sharp, tall, jagged, yet unfamiliar, as though belonging to a geography the earth once carried, but discarded quietly when no one was watching. You see valleys blooming with the rivers that have long since dried, and plains covered with forests now turned to dust. The images tremble like memories resisting their own resurfacing. A strange sadness washes through you. These are not maps. These are remnants, echoes of places forgotten, or perhaps erased to spare the human spirit from the weight of remembering too much. It is said that priests once served here, not priests of gods, but priests of memory. They dedicated their lives to guarding these horizons, the ones that faded, the ones that vanished, the ones that threatened to overwhelm the mind with their enormity. For in older ages, before the world had settled into the shapes we now accept, people believed that too many memories could unravel the soul. To remember everything was to carry a weight greater than the earth itself. So the priests preserved the unremembered. They placed the scrolls in the archive. They allowed moonlight, not sunlight, to reveal the landscapes. Because the moon understands things the sun does not. The moon knows how to hold silence, how to reveal gently, how to hide tenderness within shadows. And so, the archive became a resting place for horizons that the world no longer wished to carry. Places swallowed by oceans, kingdoms crushed beneath mountains, forests erased to make room for deserts, and deserts erased to make room for seas. Each landscape held here is a ghost in the gentlest sense of the word. Not haunting, but waiting. Waiting to be seen for just a moment before fading back into blankness. You walk deeper still. The hall narrows. The moonlight thins. And then, in a secluded alcove, you find something unexpected. A table, round, carved with rings like the inside of a tree. On it rests a single scroll, different from the others. Its parchment is thicker, edges darkened, wooden spine etched with spirals. You lift it carefully. Moonlight spills onto its surface, and the scroll awakens. A horizon appears. But not one of land or sea. This is something else. A horizon not yet formed. A place that could have existed but never did. A coastline that curls like a sleeping creature yet dissolves into mist at its edges. Mountains rise only to collapse into pale dust before your eyes. A river begins to flow, then splits into two, then three, then fades entirely. This horizon never held a name, never held a kingdom. never held the footstep of any living soul. Perhaps it is a memory of the world dreaming itself forward, a glimpse of what could have been if time had chosen a different thread. You feel a quiet awe. Some truths, you realize, are so fragile they must be stored not in books, but in silence. As the night deepens, the moon begins its slow descent. The light that once filled the chamber thins, softens, fades. The scrolls lose their glow. Horizons dissolve back into blank parchment. Rivers disappear. Islands fade. Mountains crumble into ghostly nothing. One by one, the archive's memories withdraw like a tide returning to the depths. And soon, the hall is filled with nothing but blank scrolls again. Silent, resting, patient, as though the whispers you witnessed were never meant for the waking world. A soft understanding settles inside you. Some landscapes survive only as echoes. Some stories live only in the spaces between forgetting and remembering. Some horizons must remain erased to allow the mind to rest. Perhaps the priests knew this when they tended this place. Perhaps the archive remains not to hide truth, but to protect it. To keep it gentle, to keep it whole beneath the soft veil of moonlight. You walk toward the entrance. The air grows warmer. The scent of sand returns. You step outside just as dawn begins to bloom along the edge of the desert. The sky blushes with soft rose and pale gold. The dunes stretch endlessly before you, gentle as waves in a sleeping sea. Behind you, the archive is quiet, its entrance half-shadowed, its walls bathed in the first warm light of morning. You stand for a moment, watching the desert breathe, feeling the soft ache of wonder settle into your chest. Perhaps the horizons you saw were never meant to be reclaimed. Perhaps they belong to the world's deeper memory, far beyond the reach of maps and charts. As the sun rises, the last traces of moonlight vanish, and with them the images hidden within the scrolls. Only blankness remains. Calm, soft, resting. And you understand. Some truths survive only when they are allowed to fade. Some voices only echo when the world grows quiet enough to hear them. Tonight, in the hush of the desert's forgotten threshold, you heard one, the compass that pointed to yesterday. It is said that not all compasses seek the future. Some, rare and quiet as breath on a winter morning, seek something else entirely. The slow pulse of memory, the echo of ancestry, the truth buried not beneath soil, but beneath time. And tonight, under a sky washed in the faint blush of approaching dawn, you stand before such an object. A delicate compass resting within a cracked wooden chest. The wood is soft with age, its edges frayed, its lid warped by years of travel and the weight of countless forgotten hands. Inside, wrapped in a scrap of faded cloth, lies the compass. A small disc of tarnished metal, once bright as starlight, now softened into a muted glow. Its surface marked with etchings of spirals and tiny stars that catch the morning light in shy, wavering reflections. You lift it gently. It trembles. Not outwardly, not in any motion you can see, but in a subtle vibration that travels through your fingertips like the faintest echo of a heartbeat. The needle glimmers faintly, trembling not toward north, nor toward any direction the known world recognizes. Instead, it leans backward, pointing behind you toward the horizon you have already crossed, toward something unseen, something unmeasured. Some say it points toward memory itself, The pale morning fog gathers around your ankles as you begin to walk. The ground beneath your feet is cool, soft, damp with dew. Grass bends gently beneath each step, as though inviting you deeper into the secrets of the valley ahead. The compass trembles once more in your hand, its needle quivering like a thought trying to rise to the surface. You follow its direction, not hurriedly. There is no urgency here, but slowly, as one might follow a whisper. Fog curls around you in long silver ribbons. In the distance, the silhouette of hills rises, their outlines softened by the gentle hush of dawn. A faint breeze drifts through the valley, carrying with it the smell of stone and moss and something older. A scent that feels like memory itself, stirred from slumber. Then, as the fog parts, you see them. Stone rings, dozens of them, scattered across the valley floor like the marks of vanished hearths, their shapes carved into the earth in patient, circular patterns. Some are complete, perfect in their symmetry. Others are broken, their stones scattered as if the past itself had exhaled too heavily and gently undone them. You kneel beside the nearest one. The stones are cold beneath your palm, smooth with weather yet carrying the faintest grooves. Marks carved by hands that have long returned to dust. A soft ache rises in your chest. This valley once held people whose footsteps no longer fall here, but whose stories linger in silent rings of stone. It is said that the people of this valley were wanderers of a different sort. They did not travel in search of land, nor food, nor survival. They traveled in search of themselves. This compass, the one trembling faintly in your hand, was believed to guide them not forward, but inward, toward memories unspoken, toward their ancestors' shadows, toward the echoes of migrations carved not on maps, but on the inside of their bones. Some believe that these rings marked places where families paused during century-long journeys. Others whispered that these circles were the remains of farewell fires, moments where clans split, promising to meet again when the stars aligned with the shape of the valley. Perhaps both are true, perhaps neither. Perhaps the valley simply remembers the weight of those gatherings and holds their silence like a fragile relic. You stand and walk toward the center of the largest stone ring. The compass vibrates more strongly here. Its needle sways, wavers, then steadies, not pointing outward, but downward, toward the earth, toward something buried, not an object. You feel that instinctively, not treasure, nor parchment, nor tool, something else, something like legacy. You crouch and place the compass gently on one of the central stones. The moment it touches the surface, its trembling ceases. The needle becomes still, perfectly still. The silence around you deepens. It is a silence that feels full, not empty, as though the air itself is holding its breath. You exhale softly. Perhaps the path you seek is not outward, but inward. Perhaps this compass does not point to any piece of land at all, but to the quiet chamber where memory sleeps. Your gaze drifts across the valley. The fog lifts slowly, revealing more rings you had not noticed before. Circles of stone stretching across the grass like ancient constellations fallen from the sky. Each ring seems to hum with a different emotion, a different echo of farewells whispered beneath starlight. One ring feels warm, like laughter lingering in the air. Another feels heavy, like sorrow folded carefully into the shape of the stones. You walk slowly between them. The breeze picks up, carrying the faintest sound. Not quite a voice, not quite a memory, but something between. It is said that these rings hold the echoes of migrations too old to record. Journeys across vast plains lit only by firelight. Journeys guided by the alignment of stars and the shape of distant mountains. Journeys woven with stories, whispered from one generation to another, until they became the lifeblood of a people. Perhaps this valley was a resting place, not of the body, but of the spirit, a place to remember before continuing onward. You return to the central circle where the compass rests. The needle has not moved. You sit beside it on a stone smoothed by time. The grass sways gently around your legs. A bird calls somewhere in the distance, its voice soft, a solitary note echoing in the quiet. You close your eyes, and slowly, the valley begins to speak, not in sound, not in words, but in sensation. A warmth spreads across your chest, as though a hand has been placed there gently. Pictures rise within your mind, not vivid, not sharp, but soft as smoke. People carrying children and baskets of grain, elders wrapped in cloaks the color of dusk, lines of travelers moving beneath starlit skies. A cluster of hands releasing a stone onto the earth to mark a moment too precious to forget. A child laughing as firelight dances in her eyes. A woman whispering farewell, her voice trembling with love, with hope, with something like timelessness. And then, a great silence as footsteps fade toward the horizon. You open your eyes. The compass remains still. The valley breathes lightly in the newborn sunlight. A realization settles within you with the softness of falling dust. Perhaps yesterday is not behind us in the way we imagine. Perhaps it is within us, woven through our breath, resting in our ribs, waiting to be heard in quiet places like this. Perhaps the compass points not to a physical place, but to the part of us still connected to those who walked before. Memory is not linear, nor is time, nor is the path by which the soul learns its name. Some stories must be found not by walking forward, but by turning inward, by listening to the echoes carried gently beneath the silence. You lift the compass from the stone. It is warm now, as though holding the memory of everything it revealed. The needle trembles once more, not strongly, not urgently, just a soft shiver, like a breath released after holding too long. You tuck the compass back into the cracked wooden chest and close the lid. The valley watches with its quiet, ancient gaze. A breeze sweeps through the grass, lifting a few petals from unseen flowers. They drift in soft spirals before settling gently upon the nearest stone ring. A farewell, a blessing, a reminder. You turn toward the horizon and begin to walk back through the thinning morning fog. And as you leave the valley behind, you carry with you a truth soft as a whisper then and deep as the earth itself. Yesterday is not a place we leave behind. It is a place we carry within us, waiting quietly to be heard. Some voices only echo when the world grows still. Tonight, in the gentle hush of dawn, you heard one, guiding you not outward, but inward, toward the memory that has always been yours. The last mapmaker who drew only in silence. It is said that on the farthest edges of old deserts, where the dunes turn pale as ash, and the wind carries not sound, but a slow ancient breath. There stands a hermitage, carved into the face of a cliff, a lonely refuge, a place untouched by the hurried pulse of the world, a place where silence lives not as absence but as a presence. And it is here, in this remote sanctuary, overlooking silver dunes, that the last mapmaker lived. Not a mapmaker of borders or empires or trade routes, but one who believed the world could speak without speaking. One who believed that sound interfered with truth. That the earth's deepest voice was something one could hear only in profound, unbroken quiet. Tonight, you travel there. Under a night sky veiled in thin, drifting clouds, you walk across dunes that shimmer faintly, reflecting moonlight as though they were dusted with crushed stars. The air is cool, light as silk, smelling faintly of stone and forgotten incense. Your footsteps make no sound. Even the wind seems to step lightly as you approach the cliff face. Carved into the stone, barely visible until you are close enough to touch it, is a narrow doorway, an opening shaped like the curve of a crescent moon. You step inside, the world behind you fades, and silence washes over you like warm water. The hermitage is small, a single chamber, a single window, a single desk carved from the stone wall, and upon it, dust gathered in a soft, undisturbed layer that glows silver in the moonlight. This was the last mapmaker's sanctuary, a place where he worked for decades, drawing the world not with ink nor with sound, but with silence. He believed that waves spoke more clearly in their pauses, that the wind whispered truth only when it stilled, that mountains sighed in the quiet moments between dawn and day. Some say he spent entire seasons here without speaking a single word. Others swear that he once sat for 3 days, knees unmoving, listening not with his ears, but with the quiet space inside his ribs. That hollow chamber where breath becomes thought and thought becomes knowing. You walk to the desk. There, resting upon it, lies a single parchment, a single map, his last. It is blank, utterly blank. No ink, no lines, no markings. Only the faintest texture of hand-pressed fibers beneath dust. At first glance, it looks like nothing at all. The absence of a map, the memory of an idea never given form. But whispers tell us that this map was unlike any other. That its purpose was not to show the world as it is, nor as it was, but as it is felt. Not geography, not landmarks, not oceans or peaks or forests, but the soft impressions of breath and starlight. You kneel beside the desk and brush your fingers lightly against the parchment's edge. It is warm. You exhale slowly, and the breath seems to linger in the air, held tenderly in the stillness of the chamber. The moon shifts outside. Its light drifts through the small window and spills across the parchment, like a gentle hand opening a long-closed book. And then, the blankness stirs. Not abruptly, not dramatically, but slowly, like a memory awakening. Faint shapes begin to emerge, soft as watercolor clouds, delicate as the first hint of dawn. Contoured tours of land, but not any land you recognize. These are shapes drawn not from geography, but from the quiet pulse beneath it. A coastline curves gently like the edge of a long exhale. Mountains rise in soft crescent arcs as though grown from moonlight. Rivers meander like drifting thought, not obeying gravity, but emotion. Nothing is sharp. Nothing is fixed. Everything is tender, fluid, alive. You feel something inside you soften. Perhaps this was the mapmaker's intention, to remind those who looked upon his work that the world is more than boundaries, more than lines, more than separation. That beneath the silence, the earth carries a language older than ink, a language of breath, a language of starlight, a language of becoming. The shapes shift again. The coastline dissolves into a pattern of swirling dust. The mountains flatten, then rise elsewhere in looping spirals. The map does not hold still because the truth it reflects does not hold still. The last mapmaker believed that the world was in constant motion, not only physically, but spiritually, that each person carries within them a landscape of memory, emotion, and longing that changes shape as they do. His map was said to show not where one is, but who one is becoming. You sit quietly, watching the soft shapes bloom and fade. The silence feels different now, not empty, but full. Full of something unnamed and deeply familiar. Perhaps this is what he heard when he listened to the wind's quiet pulse beneath its louder movements. Perhaps this is what he saw in the moments when the world fell completely still. You turn your gaze to the walls of the hermitage. They are carved with symbols, spirals, crescents, star-marked dots, and shapes resembling waves. Not decorative, not random. Marks of meditation, marks of understanding. Here, etched in stone, are the mapmaker's thoughts. Not written in words, but in forms. A spiral for a question, a crescent for a revelation, a star for a memory, a wave for a truth that moves with subtle grace. You run your hand over a spiral. It is smooth from years of touch. You imagine the mapmaker standing here, silent and still, his fingers tracing these same grooves while he listened to the breath of the mountains, the pulse of the dunes, the quiet song the earth sings only at the edge of sleep. Perhaps he drew the world not as it existed, but as he felt it. Perhaps he believed that feeling is a kind of cartography, a map not of direction, but of understanding. The moon slips behind a cloud. Its light dims. The shapes on the parchment fade like a dream, withdrawing into the depths of night. First the rivers, then the mountains, then the coastlines, each dissolving gently into blankness, until the parchment is empty once more, smooth and pale beneath a layer of dust. You wait for the shapes to return. They do not. The chamber settles into stillness so complete it feels like a closing breath. But the silence does not feel final. It feels intentional, sacred, like the pause between heartbeats. Perhaps the mapmaker intended his last work to be seen only briefly. A momentary glimpse into a truth meant not to be captured, but to be felt. You place your hand over the parchment. It is cool now, still, resting, as though exhausted from revealing its quiet miracle. You rise slowly and walk toward the window. The dunes outside shimmer faintly, their silver curves soft as waves beneath the night sky. From this vantage, the desert looks like a vast breathing body, rising and falling in gentle exhalations. Perhaps the mapmaker listened to this rhythm each night, mapping not the land, but the breath of it. Perhaps he believed that every place on earth carried a pulse, a tone, a whisper, and that to truly know the world, one must learn not to look, but to listen. Beneath the silence, where memory fades, where truth rests, unburdened by lines, you return to the center of the chamber. Dust swirls lightly around your feet, as though stirred by a memory passing through the room. You bow your head, not in reverence, not in ritual, but simply in gratitude for a quietness that feels deeper than any map ever drawn. Perhaps the truest maps are not drawn to show us where to go. Perhaps they are drawn to remind us how to listen, how to be still, how to allow the world to reveal itself slowly, softly, like moonlight touching stone, like breath warming cold air, like a memory returning only when the mind is gentle enough to receive it. You take one last look at the blank parchment, and though nothing remains upon it, you feel as though you carry a map within you now. A map of softness, of breath, of ancient listening. Perhaps it is enough. You step back through the crescent doorway. The desert stretches before you, wide and quiet, bathed in milky silver light. Behind you, the hermitage fades into the shadow of the cliff, as though it never existed at all. And as you walk into the dunes, a soft truth settles around you like a final whisper. Some voices only echo when the world grows silent. Tonight, you have heard one,